Donald Trump surprised many by suggesting Ukraine give some territory to Putin and call it a victory. Putin is once again trying to sell Trump an old idea to end the war, and unfortunately, Trump has partly fallen for it. After the October 16 conversation between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, more details revealed that Putin again demanded all of Donbas be given to Russia to end the war. And it all started with what Trump described as a very productive phone conversation, and a hint that a personal meeting between Trump and Putin could take place in 2 weeks in Budapest, or maybe a bit later than 2 weeks. This is very similar to Moscow's usual scenario, to drag out the process and at the end of this process to offer something that cannot be accepted or implemented. And then say, listen, well, we did hold negotiations, and now several publications are directly writing that the Kremlin has put forward conditions. Full control over the Donetsk region as the price for ending the war, with a hint to discuss parts of the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. This is the same old territorial exchange, just in a new wrapper. At the same time, the Washington Post, for example, noted Kyiv's main concern back in the summer. Talks about Donbas under the guise of compromise are a direct path to capitulation. But why did Trump fall for all this again? Let's discuss that. My name is Pechiy. Today is October 19th. Let's go through everything step by step. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment, and subscribe to the Pechiy News Telegram channel. The link is in this video's description, and if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support Alexei Pechiy's channel, choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you give, so it's important to remember the chronology here. In August, the White House suggested Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin might first meet in Alaska. Then, with the help of diplomacy, Washington would refine the future peace deal and eventually organize a final meeting between Putin and Zelensky, where Trump might also be present. At that time, the Washington Post described the context in detail. The meeting in Alaska was necessary. For the image, we're pushing for peace. We're forcing peace through. And Moscow needed this to legitimize its territorial claims. After that, promises of a second round followed. Once again, the newsfeed is full of familiar phrases, ready to meet but need to coordinate teams first. In 2 weeks, there will be a meeting. Or maybe not in 2 weeks, but definitely in Budapest, and so on and so on. This is the standard stalling tactic. Time works for the one who shoots, not for the one who waits. And now, Putin is trying to stretch out time and shoot. A separate detail is the public signals from Washington about fresh promises of long-range missiles for Ukraine. That may not be the case, but what does matter is soft diplomacy. Trump states that the United States is watching the steps and trying to bring the sides to the negotiating table. Makes you want to ask, well, after Alaska, they already tried to bring the sides together, but it didn't work out. And Trump himself came out and said that Putin doesn't want to end the war. Now Trump says again, we're trying to bring the sides together. And against this background, Putin's demands to give him Donbas sound. It doesn't even sound like a trade-off. It's hard to express. But as a trade-off, okay, like Trump said, a territorial exchange. No, it looks like a trap. Why? Because if we agree to this, hypothetically, let's say we agree to give up Donbas. Tomorrow, Moscow will demand something else, and Ukraine has already experienced this with the special status and gray zone. And so on and so on and so on. And the Washington Post, in its reports, emphasized back in the summer that the main danger is turning any pause at all into a reward for the aggressor. And today, Trump, in response to a Fox News question, was asked if he had the impression that the Russian dictator was ready to end the war without conquering a significant part of Ukraine. He says, quoting, Putin has already taken part of Ukraine and will take more. And now look at what's happening. I specifically went to monitor not only English language or Russian language media, but also other mass media outlets from India, China, and the Middle East. And I wanted to see how these latest news stories are being covered there. And you know what idea is being pushed there very loudly for the public, especially for those who aren't really in the know. And it goes like this. Putin demands the entire Donbas, but is ready to give up huge parts of other regions to Ukraine. But it sounds as if Putin is ready to give up or hand over to Ukraine some territories that didn't belong to it before the war. Like, he will take Donbas for himself, but Ukraine will get some other territory. Dry press logic lacks specifics, but the direction is clear. That is, Moscow is bargaining with someone else's territory, trying to put Washington in the role of arbiter. And that's a very big trap. In reality, this is pushing so-called fatigue, meaning they're counting on the world getting tired of this long conflict. So let's just resolve the issue very quickly. Okay, let's give Putin some territory and that's it. But what does quickly mean? Quickly means at Ukraine's expense. Ukraine acknowledges this and publicly insists it won't legalize territorial seizure. Why Donbas specifically? For Ukrainians, this has always been a symbol. It's also a symbol for Putin and his former madness. And for 10 years, the Kremlin has been explaining to its ordinary people, to its society, that without Donetsk, there is no victory. The military machine still couldn't, fully take Donbas. Putin's military machine hasn't been able to capture this territory in 10 years. And now the Kremlin is suggesting to do this just with a pen at the negotiating table, meaning not with the help of the military machine. This isn't about peace, it's about television, putting a flag on the map and declaring, we've met our goal. In 2014, when they attacked Ukraine, they claimed they would protect Donetsk, Luhansk, and Russian-speaking people. And here, you see, after 10 years of war, even more than 10 years, they still can't capture Donbas. That's why they want to create this image. But what's the risk? As soon as they put up this flag, the next demand will appear right away. Give us all of Luhansk, give us the entire Zaporizhzhia region, then Kherson, Odessa, give us Odessa as well. And then there will be demands for some kind of security corridors, for demilitarization for another 50 kilometers, for some buffer zone, and so on and so on. A concession in this format does not end the war. It opens the next act of this war. At the same time, Moscow is dragging things out and wasting time with these statements. In Budapest, there will be a meeting between Trump and Putin in 2 weeks. But first, the agenda needs to be agreed upon. The teams need to be coordinated. A lot of negotiations have to take place and so on. This is just stalling for the sake of stalling. Because even while you're listening to this analysis right now, you understand that Russia is launching missiles and drones at Ukraine at this very moment, trying to capture more territory. And today, during his video address, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that Ukraine will not give anything to Russia. Quote, "No one will forget anything for them. We clearly see that this Russian Federation is a long-term threat. We in Europe need long-term cooperation and real results in the short term. I instructed Ukrainian diplomats to prepare a new meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in the near future." Well, Zelensky also emphasized today that, in fact, every day or two there is a strike on Russian oil refining facilities. He also added, and I quote, "I don't understand why the leader of the largest country on earth needs a few more kilometers. This is not a war for territory, but for our independence." Finally, I'll share an insight. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, pressured the Ukrainian delegation led by Volodymyr Zelensky regarding the transfer of Donetsk region during the meeting with Trump on Friday, arguing that the region is predominantly Russian-speaking. Do you understand, Witkoff? They mainly discussed protecting the Russian-speaking population, and what a relief it was, well, for me personally, when the Wall Street Journal reported today that for the first time, Marco Rubio will lead the preparations for the Trump-Putin negotiations in Budapest on the American side, replacing Steve Witkoff. If you remember, those who have been subscribed to my YouTube channel for a long time will recall that just a few months ago, probably in May, in February, even when the negotiations between the American and Russian sides were just beginning, I said that it was very strange. There is the Secretary of State of the United States of America, who is essentially the United States Minister of Foreign Affairs, whose direct function and task is precisely to organize diplomacy. But for some reason, businessman and Trump friend Steve Witkoff handled this diplomacy instead of Marco Rubio. I wondered, how does this even work? Then what's the point of having Marco Rubio? How, in a democratic country, do they take away the functions from the Secretary of State and give them to some kind of special envoy, not even a person who is part of the United States Department of State staff? And finally, they returned the reins of the State Department to Marco Rubio in the context of negotiations with the Russians. Why is this important? Because, as Donald Trump said, Witkoff doesn't know anything about politics or Russia. When he went to meet with Putin in Moscow, he constantly distorted the details of the negotiation process. The administration couldn't definitively state that the problem was specifically with Putin. Remember, before the meeting in Alaska, there were leaks when Witkoff came and told Trump, "Listen, I've made a deal. Putin is ready for anything. You'll agree on everything. Just meet in Alaska. He's really ready for anything. Everything will end the war. You'll be a peacemaker." Putin arrived, listed conditions, and Witkoff admitted he hadn't understood everything. Well, now that Rubio will lead the negotiation process, there's a chance that Trump will finally understand that the whole problem is actually with Putin. It's Putin who is the real evil, and the Russians along with him. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.